When we're talking about furnaces, electric furnaces or gas furnaces for our heating, our heating and or cooling systems, i.e. being used in combination with a heat pump as well, gas furnaces should be, in my professional opinion, be serviced every year whether you think it needs it or not. If you don't service the gas furnace every year and it starts developing problems, those problems could manifest themselves into the heat exchangers of the furnace, which are typically the most expensive parts of the furnace to replace. You could probably expect that with no servicing whatsoever, a gas furnace only lasts between, let's say, 20 to 25 years at best, and then it needs to be upgraded. And with the types of furnaces that are out there now, there's more technology that's involved in those. There are higher efficiencies, those types of things. But when a furnace does need to be upgraded, it would be my professional opinion to definitely move to a high efficiency furnace, a 90, 95, 96% efficiency furnace, and get away from the 80% efficiency types of furnaces out there. On the flip side of it, electric furnace, probably an indefinite lifespan. There's not much that goes wrong with the furnace itself. I do also want to touch on the fact of filtration with the house and the filters of the house. We've spent a lot of time over the seasons talking about our indoor air quality, where the air comes from, relative humidity within houses. But it's extremely important to understand the filtration that we need to take into consideration with our furnaces. So I want to tell you a little bit about how a filter actually works. So if we weren't talking about furnaces right now, we were just talking about filters. If I said to you the gas filter in your car or the oil filter in your car, they're not all designed the same. A big truck, let's say like an F-350 pickup truck, uses a 5-quart oil filter. A little small Prius truck probably uses maybe at best a couple of quarts of oil in its filter. So again, they're designed differently. It's the same principle of how furnace filters are designed. So when we're speaking about air, we're speaking about air as it moves. The velocity, how fast the air moves, and the viscosity of that fluid. Air is a fluid, even though we can't see it typically unless there's another type of media like smoke or something like that put on top of the air current itself. We don't see the air moving, so we don't actually assimilate the air as a fluid. But it is a fluid. It's moving at a certain rate and a certain volume, and also the viscosity of it, how thick that air actually is. So that's how filters are designed. So a filter is designed on two principles. One is called HEPA, H-E-P-A, stands for High Efficiency Particulate Abatement. Those are typically the filters that are pleated and are rigid. They give you about 3 to 4 times the surface coverage to catch particulate matter. Because what is a filter doing? It is catching micronial size particulate matter. If it's an oil filter or a gas filter, it's micronial size particulate matter that it's trying to capture. So it's the same thing, same principle with the air. It's trying to catch all of this particulate matter. So we want a good HEPA filter. The other part of the filter that's involved is what most people don't understand is what we call the MERV rating for the filter. So we could say Merv Griffin, right? MERV, M-E-R-V, stands for Minimum Efficiency Rating Value. And it's actually the density or the porousness of the fabric filter itself, meaning this: how much air can I blow through, for example, my shirt versus a Gore-Tex jacket? Now that is a big, big difference. So the MERV ratings on filter furnaces will run from a 2 to a 20. A 2 is like what I refer to as the salt and pepper shaker. Right? Put a little salt and pepper on it, shake it, stuff falls right through it. Put it up to your face, you can look through it. Electronic air filters, you can look right through those. So those are really good filters, electronic air filters. I'll mention and get to that in just a moment. But as a filter goes, as far as the MERV rating goes from a 2 to a 20, to find the correct MERV rating filter for your furnace, it's based on the volume of air that furnace is moving. So most furnaces have pretty standard types of main blower motors. The CFM of those motors will run anywhere from 1250 to 1500, maybe a little bit above that, 1750, somewhere in that range. So because of that, you don't want to buy a filter that's so thin that you can look through it, or a salt and pepper shaker example. And then again, you don't want to buy one that's so thick that you can't get any air through it. If we're not getting air through it, that means that the furnace is not being designed or being used to its total functionality. In other words, to move that certain amount of volume of air. Now we're backing warm, moist air up into the furnace, and that's creating internal problems for the furnace. And so we want to buy one that's correctly sized for the furnace and the MERV rating. Typically, to find the MERV rating for a filter for a furnace, you can take the model and the serial number off of the furnace itself, run that to the manufacturer's website, and it will typically tell you the MERV rating and or it will tell you the CFM of the motor itself. And then you can cross-reference that motor CFM to the type of MERV. Most furnaces out there will run anywhere between a MERV 8 to as much as about a 12 for residential use. We don't see anything above an 11 or a 12, and those are typically for bigger furnaces, bigger volumes of air. So if you were to go out and just as an example buy a MERV 8, let's say 20 by 20 MERV 8, you probably wouldn't be doing yourself any disfavors whatsoever by buying that type of filter. The other part about filters that we don't take into consideration a lot of times, we don't change them enough. People don't change their filters maybe once a year, maybe once every couple of years. They don't think anything about it. Again, it's out of sight, out of mind. Well, as we're catching fine particulate matter through that filter fabric, you may take the filter out and look at it yourself, but you can't actually see what's embedded within the fabric itself, all the particulate matter. So it doesn't matter what it looks like to you visually. If you put it under a microscope and cut that filter fabric away, you'd see that those pores are really, really clogged up and are not allowing air to go through. It's always my recommendation basically replace that furnace filter at least once every 2 to 3 months. It may seem excessive, but again, we're back to our indoor air quality and how that's working for our health, which is our wealth, right? We don't want to be sick. So it's very important to change your filter once every 2 to 3 months on average. We talk about electronic air filters. So an electronic air filter works on the basis of relative humidity. It's like a big bug zapper, right? And then what it's doing is it's zapping large microneal-sized particulate of matter. But that matter has to be electrically statically charged. To become electrically statically charged, you have to have a higher relative humidity within the interior of the house. Well, I mentioned early on that if your relative humidity is only 40 to 50%, that's good air. You start getting above 50%, that's bad air. In other words, mold and bacterial product that's carried on your air currents. And so when you start getting relative humidity that's up there so far that an electronic air filter starts zapping those, your relative air humidity is probably not really good. I'm not a big advocate as a personal, as professionally, I'm not an advocate of electronic air filters. We don't see as many of those anymore than, we just don't see them at all, hardly at all. Most manufacturers aren't even putting electronic air filters on their components. They've found through studies and other things that we've done that fabric-based types of filters are better filters for us to use.